some emails that we're going to get to that you've emailed before the show. Clif, we get new listeners all the time, people around the world. So I just meet you at a bar, and we're having a beer, and I say, Clif, what do you do for a living? And the guy's not the CIA or anything.
Well, that's the first thing that I have to determine is
you trust me.
Who's asking?
Yeah, you're going to trust me, and you're going to tell me, and you're going to explain.
Basically, yeah. I'm going to say, well, I'm a frustrated boat bum that can never get out on the water because the universe keeps throwing too much work at me.
I see. I like that.
But basically, what I do is I've got this theory that everybody is psychic, and that we leak out all of our psychic information in odd little ways, but one of the ways that we leak out the psychic information is in the choice of words we use in standard, ordinary, everyday conversations. Because basically the way that human mind works, there's no real reason for us to wander outside of our normal lexicon in any given conversation. And most of the conversations we have day after day after day after day are relatively routine and not worth remembering. And usually we go through basically the same steps in them and so on. So you go to the forum in fact, it's even been noted by magazines, major magazine publishers, the guys that used to take and put words on paper and mail them out to you and that kind of thing. They're mainly disappearing these days once the Internet came into play, but they used to have a 2-year cycle. So in other words, they'd have the same article now as they ran 2 years ago this month, and the same different writer, same subject matter, just updated. And 2 years from now, they'll be running the same article because people are very routine and they want to read the same kind of things over and over again as we go through these subjects. Yeah, so Time Magazine, all of them, they all had basically a 2-year cycle. I noticed this in my work that in doing computer programming that people rarely stepped outside of their usual lexicon. And some people, it was an issue for programmers because programmers had to interface with non-programmers who had very specialized skill sets that had to be encoded and basically turned into computer programs. And so as a computer design consultant or a design engineer or a software engineer, you would have to sit down and basically learn everything that your customer or subject matter knew about a particular subject in order to be able to write the code to turn it into an expert system or a computer program of one form or another. And so I had a great deal of interaction with humans and discovered that the curiosity about humans is that if they're discussing gardening, they'll be basically having the same conversation that they had a year ago about this time relative to the gardening, etc. But a curious part of it all is they wouldn't use the same word set. And I kept wondering about that until it finally dawned on me that, maybe something is attempting to express itself within that word set that is different from the last time. So I set about and wrote a bunch of computer programs that sweep the Internet looking for changes in language within normal lexicon areas on basically a week-to-week basis.
Changes. That's the important thing.
Correct. It's the change. It's not the words being used. Mm-hmm. It's the difference in the words this set over the last time we were at this particular area.
It's not anything as dumb as, let's see, somebody is contemplating suicide and they, in a gardening forum, they say, man, I'm going to kill myself if we don't get some rain. I mean, would that be...
Actually, we would take that sentence, certainly. We would have that sentence, but we don't care about an individual saying, we're not going to react to those as conscious words. Basically, what the program does is aggregate all of these. And so it's going to note that the word kill was used, but that frequently shows up in the gardening forum as people discuss killing slugs and bugs and so on, right? Mm-hmm. But it's going to be noted as being exceptional in this case because it's going to be attached to or in close proximity to the personal pronoun myself, and therefore it would have a particular flag set within our processing. So indeed, that particular instance would show up within our processing as one of the nuances where we would have a meaningful and worth looking at difference in the word set. However, I wouldn't, from my viewpoint, I wouldn't receive the whole sentence. I would actually find the word kill would have thousands of attributes set because it had been picked up in thousands of conversations in that particular forum. But one of those would change the hue on it within my display a little bit, make it a little bit more intense, because it had been associated with a personal pronoun. And the personal pronoun is an effective tool for us because frequently people do apply to themselves through the use of personal pronouns and other conversations some of the psychic stuff that comes out. So it's curious, but you find individuals that if one were to sweep enough, you would probably note that a lot of people that are going to die tomorrow accidentally leaked that information out 3 or 4 or 5 days ago, recounting a dream or some other statement, and so this stuff actually leaks out ahead of time. Now, in this case, I wouldn't know who said that. I couldn't track it down or any of that. I wouldn't even know that it was related to the word myself. I would just see that this attribute for personal pronoun association was flagged, which would make it interesting for me. But.
Yeah, so you're dealing with the basic premise that we're spiritual beings or soul, however you would like to term it, and we know really what's going to be happening in our lives. We're maybe not conscious of it, but it leaks out into our conversation. That's your premise.
Yes, the basic premise is that it leaks out that especially most people are not aware of it. My viewpoint is that matter does not exist, that we're all energy. I know there is consciousness with a big C, but the definition of the soul gets into religion, and I'd rather not go into that, but fundamentally we're all energy. We're vibrating at 22 trillion times a second. Our brains can only process maybe 30 or 40 times a second, so we don't see all of the other aspects of creation being continuously created around us. But if we were to accept my premise as accurate, as a good view of reality, if everything is in fact vibrating energy, then it makes perfect sense that a change in that vibrating energy, which we would call transition movement into the future, time change, would be perceptible by the standing waves, that is our little bits of consciousness hovering around this particular standing wave that I call my body. Make sense? Meaning I'm an energetic vibrating antenna in a sense, and so it makes it's perfectly logical that in an energetic world, any change in the nature of vibration, which would be change into the future, would be perceptible. How far out would be open to debate.
And what if this ball of energy, this little spark of light and love, or whatever you want to call it, what if it was omnipotent, omnipresent?
Well, that's big C consciousness.
Yeah, big C
consciousness. If you want to go that way, we're little C consciousness.
So you think you believe that we are separate?
No, I don't believe.
From that.
I don't like the word believe. We've got to be real careful here. You're talking to a radical linguist, and I really annoy people. But the word believe,
that's right.
The word believe is actually broken down into 2 words: belief, which means I wish.
I wish.
And it actually means I wish this to be true, whatever the subject is that we're talking about.
Right.
So I would prefer not to have a belief system because I want to examine reality. I don't want to put my projections on it.
Right. So what do you know for sure?
Well, I know for sure that indeed we are in an energetic universe, and I know for sure that large C consciousness exists. I also know for sure that it does not give a damn about being worshipped. It doesn't ask you to sacrifice your children. None of this religious crap. And so religion is a curiosity, and I believe, and I am of the opinion that indeed some of the other thinkers out there are quite correct. Religion is one of the ultimate control mechanisms and nothing more. So I don't worry about the soul or any of that because I know that little C consciousness is merely a subset of big C consciousness, and it continues beyond the death of the experiential body. And so I think of the body as being a glove box. You know what a glove box is?
Sure, just a little vehicle thing.
Glove box is a glove box is a place where you might, in a laboratory, you might deal with petri dishes. You got something you don't want to touch, and so you put it into this glove box, and you reach in through these gloves that are attached to the outside world. Make any sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Basically, what I'm saying is, well, let me put it this way. Let's use the analogy that David Icke uses, and that is that we're microscopes. Okay, we are all microscopes as bodies. We are microscopes for examining material reality for a small subset of big C consciousness. Now, the microscope that is your body will expire at some point, but it's very much like a microscope. You just simply turn off the microscope when you're done using it. The individual or the consciousness that was using the microscope is not in any way affected. The microscope simply doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
And that's what happens to us, and that's what the process of death is. Now, it's a lot more complicated because we're experiential beings in the sense that the whole point of reality is experience and learning. And therefore, the turning off process brings with it its own level of experience that you must go through. So, or that you don't have to. You can abrogate any of this, but it's probably better that you don't. In the sense of karma and some of the other ramifications of reality. But it seems to work out. I mean, my idea in terms of the energetic universe is not my idea. It's been known for centuries. It's probably very close to the understanding that they have at the core of the Illuminati and the secret societies that stem from the Egyptians and the Atlanteans and all of that kind of crud. Because the idea of the energetic universe provides you with a different viewpoint, and let me explain that viewpoint and why it's so powerful. And it's all in your mind. It has nothing to do with reality. Let's a little laugh about material world here being real. But imagine that indeed universe is being created continuously at 22 trillion times a second and being destroyed at 22 trillion times a second instantly following that. That's the only way that there could be motion, by the way, is that every atom has to come into being for a millisecond, 1/22 trillionth time part of a second, and then be destroyed so that the next time it's recreated there can be some movement. You can do thought experiments that would prove that if matter was actually solid, none of us could breathe. There would be an impenetrable wall of atoms that you couldn't shift even though they were air, etc. But now let's look at some of the benefits here. If indeed the universe is an energetic creation and is continuously creating itself, then such things as the idea of the Egyptians moving these huge obelisks, all as single pieces of relatively fragile stone that should not in fact have been able to withstand being tilted at an angle to be set upright, but they would be able to move such things without necessarily being bothered by the material reality component of wheels or this sort of a deal, right? Because you could, if it's energy, if it's basically a bunch of atoms pretending to be solid as energy manifests continuously, and they're pretending to be solid rock, they would have a specific level of vibration. This specific level of vibration also has a specific level of vibration that, it, quote, attaches it through the gravity to the planet. So if one wanted to make the obelisk move, one needn't be concerned about the weight of the obelisk or the fact that it thinks it's stone. All one need be concerned about is altering the frequency of vibration between the vibration of the stone and the vibration that we think of as gravity or the planet below it. And thus you could then neutralize that and push it along with your finger.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, and in fact we see that T. Townsend Brown in the 50s and others were using electricity and other crude attempts to do basically just this.
My experience is that this universe that keeps being created is created through you and I.
Yeah, there's a component of that.
We're like co-creators.
Okay, and I get a little upset with that term because it has implications.
Well, you're a linguist, man. You know.
Yeah, but even beyond that, with the part of the problem now is that there you have a lot of people running around saying that, oh yeah, on October whatever in 2011 or in 2012, we're all going to reach this point where we're continuous co-creators. Well, that's fine, but there's a lot of doofuses out there that if they really put their minds